won't hear that from me not anytime soon. We've got two base scriptures this morning. The title of this message is What's in Your House? And we're going to be looking at 1 Kings 17, 10 through 16. It says, so he went to Zarephath. And when he came to the town gate, a widow was there gathering sticks. He called to her and asked, would you bring me a little water in a jar so I may have a drink? As she was going to get it, he called and bring me, please, a piece of bread. And surely as the Lord your God lives, she replied, I don't have any bread, only a handful of flour in a jar and a little olive oil in a jug. I'm gathering a few sticks to take home and make a meal for myself and my son, that we may eat and die. Elijah said to her, don't be afraid. Go home and do as you have said. But first, make a small loaf of bread for me from what you have and bring it to me. And then make something for yourself and for your son. For this is what the Lord, the God of Israel, says. The jar of flour will not be used up and the jug of oil will not run dry until the day the Lord sends rain on the land. She went away and did this as Elijah told her, so there was food every day for Elijah and for the woman and her family. For the jar of flour was not used up and the jug of oil did not run dry, in keeping with the word of the Lord spoken by Elijah. And in 2 Kings 4 and 1 through 7. The wife of a man from the company of the prophets cried to Elisha, your servant, my husband, is dead, and you know that he revered the Lord. But now his creditor is coming to take my two boys as his slaves. Elisha replied to her, how can I help you? Tell me, what do you have in your house? He said, your servant has nothing there at all. She said, except a small jar of olive oil. Elisha said, go around and ask all your neighbors for empty jars. Don't ask for just a few. He said, then go inside and shut the door behind you and your sons. Pour oil into all the jars, and as each is filled, put it to one side. She left it and shut the door behind her and her sons. They brought the jars to her, and she kept pouring. When all the jars were full, she said to her son, bring me another one. But he replied, there is not a jar left. Then the oil stopped flowing. She went and told the man of God, and he said, go sell the oil, pay your debts. You and your sons can live on what is left. Does anybody watch the TV show Hoarders? Anybody watch the show? Love the show. And I think it's a good metaphor for life. Because what we find that happens with that show is that people oftentimes have a lot of stuff. And they have to uncover the mess of life. The thing that we find out with these two widow women is that they were going through their everyday lives, collecting stuff. They were married, they had kids, they were doing the everyday routine. But then all of a sudden, life happened. Both women lost their husbands. They lost everything that they owned. And they were down to nothing. Now, the comparison it makes with the hoarders is that what happens is that these hoarders, oftentimes a traumatic event will trigger why they do what they do. But then it takes another traumatic event to make them clean out the mess of life. Just like these two women. They didn't know that they had a bunch of mess in their lives until life happened. And they had to clean out a bunch of the stuff that was going on in their houses. So the thing is that we find that the widow in 1 Kings is down to her last meal. And the widow in 2 Kings is down to her last dime. Now, many of us have probably been in those two situations. I can tell you, I've been in both. I was homeless for a pretty good period of time. I was down to my last meal and down to my last dime. Beans and rice, scrimmed together, changing my car just to have enough gas to get to work. Life happened to me. Life dealt harshly with me. And many of us have had experiences where life has dealt harshly with us. Divorces, job losses. We've dealt with infidelity in our relationships, health problems, even self-inflicted wounds. Life has dealt harshly with each and every one of us at a given point in time. And the thing that happens when life deals harshly with you is that it makes you have to do introspection. You have to turn and look in the mirror and try to figure out what's going on. You're asking questions about why this happened, why that happened, why me, why me. And see, the thing that happens is that we have to admit that maybe we didn't have it all together the way that we thought we did. The people that were supposed to be there have left. The family that we thought we could rely on, they turned their backs. The friends that we thought we could count on have all but disappeared, and then we're sitting there with ourselves doing introspection. You see, when the hoarders clean their houses out, they have to go through an assessment. They have to figure out what the damages are in order for the house to be restored to the way that it was before, to a livable condition. See, our lives mirror that same thing. When we clean out all that mess in our lives, when life happens to us and it deals harshly with us, we have to make an assessment of our lives to try to figure out what the damages are and admit that, hey, I'm messed up. I need help so that we can move forward and heal. See, a lot of times people have trouble admitting that they have issues because of embarrassment, shame. They don't want anybody to know. But see, the thing is that in order to heal, you have to admit that there's something wrong to begin with. If I went to my doctor and didn't tell him that I was diabetic, how could he put me on the proper medication to manage my diabetes if I never told him what was wrong? If we go through life and never admit that we have personal struggles, never admit that things don't always go the way that we want them to, we're never going to get to the point where we can heal and move forward, because we're constantly putting on this facade that everything is okay and things are just fine. People see the outside, but nobody ever pays attention to the inside because we cover it so well. So in order for us to move forward and to be healed, the first thing we've got to do is make that assessment and say, you know what? I've got some issues. And after we've come to terms with the issues that we do have, then we have to be mindful of our reaction to our given situation. Now, when we come back to these two widows, there were two distinct reactions that each one had. The widow in 1 Kings reacted to her situation with fear. She and her son were getting ready to have what she thought was their last meal. She feared her impending doom. The widow in 2 Kings reacted with anxiety. She was pleading with Elijah. She was like, do something to help me, because she was anxious about what was to come after. Now, there's a saying that says life is 10% what happens and 90% how you respond to it. The thing that we need to realize is that oftentimes we're poor responders. We get put in situations in life and we break down, we fly off the handle, we're crying, we're sobbing, we're pleading, and we forget all manner of good sense when life happens to us. We don't understand that we have authority over these situations that come in our lives. Our responses say that we don't trust God. Our responses say that we don't believe that He can bring us out of whatever it is that we go through. Our responses don't show that we have any faith at all. Most of the time, like I said, our responses to life's situations are extremely poor. But 1 Timothy 1:7 tells us that, wrong one, you can't read. That was first. Anyways, for the Spirit of God gave the. Type it right, man. I copied it from the side. For God has not given us the spirit of fear, but of power and of love and of a sound mind. That right there is God's answer to how we should respond to all life's issues. It says He gave us power, which means we have control and authority over those situations, not because of anything that's inside of us, but because He reigns supreme in our lives. So anything that comes against us, we have the power to cast that down. We can remain calm because we love ourselves enough and love the people enough around us not to allow the situations that happen to us to have any effect on ourselves or anybody else around us. And then the decisions, the sound mind part. We have control over our thoughts and our actions so we can make good decisions regarding the things that happen to us in life. You know, the thing that we have to stop doing is stop focusing on the size of the problem and realize that we have a God that is so much bigger than anything that can ever come against us in our lives. And we have to trust in God. You see, when we come back to our story, we see that both widows had to learn how to trust God when all they really wanted to do was curse God. See, they, like us, they got so caught up. They get so caught up in what happened. They get so caught up in their lot in life or the things that happen. They get so caught up. Why me? Why is this happening? I don't deserve this. I'm a good person. I've done everything that I'm supposed to do. But what is going on? Why does this happen to me? And see, the thing that we have to realize is that we think that it's fair for things not to happen to us. We think that it's fair for us not to have to go through anything in life. We think that it's fair that we should just do easy cruising and smooth sailing. But the thing about it is that Jesus was the example. If they did it to Him, we can rest assured that it's going to happen to us. But the thing that we have to realize is that God doesn't always do what's fair in our minds, for our lives. You see, sometimes He has to remove the very things that we think we want in order to give us the things that we really need. Now, I can stand here today to tell you that my mother will be gone 16 years Thursday. I can tell you this with all confidence that she had to die. She had to. In order for me to be the man that I am today, God had to remove her from my life. Her season in my life had served its purpose, and God saw fit to take her home. Now, as much as I wanted a relationship, as much as I would love for my wife to have met my mother, as much as I would love for my children to have known who their grandmother is, it wasn't supposed to be that way. And it took me a long time to understand that, but God had to remove what I thought I wanted in order to push me to where He needed me to be. And sometimes it's harsh, it's not comfortable, it doesn't feel good when God has to move certain things out of your life. But rest assured, it's for a purpose. Now, as a 12-year-old little boy, I didn't understand why my mother had to die. I didn't. I never cried about it. But I spent countless nights staring at the ceiling, asking the same question. Why? Why did this happen? Why did this happen? But as a 28-year-old man, I have peace about the situation now because I know that it happened to make me who I am today. So the situations that you've gone through in your life were necessary. It may not seem like it because you don't grasp the thought process of God. It doesn't feel good. It's uncomfortable for you to have to go through it. But it's necessary. You see, the thing is that what we view as punishment is God actually trying to save us. He's trying to come to our rescue. You see, the thing that we need to understand is that sometimes in life our greatest blessings are birthed out of our biggest disappointments. Our greatest blessings will come out of our biggest disappointments. You know, God has to remove our selfish desires, and then He has to fill us with His everlasting purpose. And we cannot allow our lack of understanding to create an atmosphere of mistrust. Proverbs 3, 5, and 6 says, "Trust in the Lord with all your heart, and lean not on your own understanding. In all your ways submit to Him, and He will make your path straight." So the thing that we have to realize is that we need to stop trying to wrap our brains around what God is doing. We need to stop worrying about the who He's going to send, the what He's going to send, the how, the why, and the when. And we just need to understand that God is God, and He needs room to work. So the thing that we have to understand is that in our lives, in our situations, we have to learn how to move out of the way and just let God be God. We have to let go and let God be God. You see, these two widows in these particular situations, they had to take their hands completely off their own situations in order for God to have room to move and to work in their lives. They told the prophet what they had in their house. One said, "I don't have anything but flour, a little bit of flour, and oil." The other one said, "I don't have anything but oil." If they had put their hands on their own situation, they would have surely died. And the other widow would have surely have lost her children. But because they trusted God so much, they said, "You know what? I'm going to take my hands off this. I'm going to step out on faith. And I'm going to see where this story ends." Now, trusting God is not enough. It's not. You see, we know that He's willing and able. We've heard that 1,000 times over. But the thing that we have to do is we have to be willing and submissive to His plan of action. Now, Jay and I had a conversation last night, and we came up with a pretty good analogy for this particular situation. Aaron Rodgers is the quarterback of the Packers. Those receivers are not going to be any good if he doesn't get them the ball in the spots that they're supposed to be in. But here's the kicker. If they don't run the routes the right way, he will never be able to get them the ball in the positions that they're supposed to be in. That quarterback knows those plays better than anybody else on that team. And if he knows where you're supposed to be and he tries to get you the ball in the spot you're supposed to be in and you're not there, what happens? A missed pass. what happens in life with us. God is our quarterback. He's trying to get us blessings. He's trying to move us in a certain direction. And oftentimes he's telling us to slant right, but we want to curl left. And we're missing so much because he's tossing it out there and we're out of position. We're not where he needs us to be in order for us to bless him. So we've got to learn how to be submissive to the plan and allow him to toss that blessing out there and lead us to the spots that he wants us to go to. You see, the widows in 2nd and 1st Kings, the first widow that had just a little bit of flour in her house, when she took her hands off her situation and let God be God, he took her from a woman that was on her last meal to be into a woman who was able to feed anybody that came to her house. The widow in 1 Kings, he took her from somebody that was broke, busted, and disgusted into an entrepreneur. And watch this. He didn't tell her when she sold the oil to pay her bills and then figure something else out. He told her to go and pay her debts and live on the rest, which means that she had enough to sustain her for the rest of her life. God wants to do the same things with us. He wants to take us from the bottom to the top. He wants to take us from the pit and place us on the pinnacle. God is trying to move us in those directions, but we have to learn how to let go and let him be who he wants to be in our lives. You know, we go through different things in our lives, but there are two little words that we have to remember whenever we go through any situations similar to these two ladies. And those two little words are, but God. These two women were about to be out. People had written it off. They closed the book on their lives. People said it was over. But God stepped in and fixed the situation. See, he wants to do the same thing for us. You've got health problems going on. You go in and out to the doctor and you don't know what to do. But God wants to remind you that your healing was paid for on the cross. The Bible tells us by his stripes we are healed. You don't see a way out of your situation. You've been there. You've prayed. You've cried. You've prayed and cried some more. But God wants you to know that he has not forgotten about you. The thing that we have to understand is that in this whole process, this whole month has been about being maxed out. And the thing that we have to understand is just like these women in this story, it's not about anything that we think we have. Because a lot of times, we don't think we have anything. All they thought they had was a little bit of flour and a little bit of oil. But God stepped in and showed them that he could take their nothingness, their emptiness, and create something so mind-blowing out of it that it has lasted for ages and we're still telling the same story today. As we close out this series, I'm reminded that Pastor Jay talked about Jabez. He talked about how Jabez had to make that prayer for God to grant him increase. But you know what Jabez had to do? He had to take the limits off God. He had to let go and let God be God in his situation so that his territory could be enlarged and he could be blessed to be a blessing. Pastor Dan talked about being able to move out of the way and let God do what he needs to do in your life. Last week, we heard about the investment. And we learned that we have to let go of those things that we thought were necessary in order to give God a return on that investment. And now, today, we hear that God can take nothing and create something out of it. Crossover, we don't look like much. We don't have a lot. But it's not about anything that we have. It's not about what we think is in this house. Because if all we do is commit to God and say, here, we're giving you what we do have, and we're moving out of the way, and we're going to allow you to be God in this church. You see what he did with the widows. Just imagine what he could do for us. As Pastor Jay comes, we ask everybody to stand to their feet. Getting ready to close. The thing that we have to realize is that when we go through situations in life, we have to stop worrying about how the story's going to end. Because God told us that he is the author and the finisher of our faith. So if all I can do is follow, then that's what I'm going to do. I have no other choice. He's proven himself too many times for me not to say, God, it's yours. I'm trusting you with it because you've proven yourself time and time again. Anytime anything has ever happened, you've brought me out. And that's where we have to be.